Hi guys, welcome back to Status of the Nation. Thank you again for joining me. And as per usual, you guys know we break down some of the biggest stories that have happened in our great republic and across the world. So if you guys are new to this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and let's get into the video. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the budget. Now, of course, you guys are aware that last week was budget week basically in South Africa, and the budget speech happened, and it kind of happened the way most of us thought it was going to be. So nothing really surprising, nothing really shocking came out of the budget speech. First thing that Pravin did is that he introduced a wealth tax. So a wealth tax in the sense that there's a 45% tax that will be imposed on people who earn 1.5 million and above. The thing is, it wasn't really that surprising because before the budget speech, a lot of people kind of knew that, we were headed in that direction. The wealth tax obviously is part of the tax strategy that, Pravin and I suppose National Treasury have come up with about how they're going to raise something like 28 to 30 billion rands in extra revenue. Now, I know initially a lot of people thought that that meant that VAT was going to increase, and people were speculating a lot. Like, I saw people speculating something like that going up by 2%. The thing about VAT though, and why I think we're not going to see it increase anytime soon, is because VAT is such a political issue. It's a very, very political issue, and Pravin doesn't want to touch that. So in my opinion, he's going to exhaust all other avenues, all other possible avenues before he even considers VAT. So that's why a wealth tax and the sugar tax and all the other kind of taxes are being implemented before we can even talk about VAT. So I kind of knew that VAT wasn't going to be one of the taxes that are going to be increased, and I think it's a relief for a lot of people. It's a relief for the working class, if you will, middle class. Do we even have a middle class in South Africa? I don't know. But it's a great relief for a lot of people, that VAT obviously wasn't increased. Although people who fall into the wealth tax category almost feel like VAT should have been increased because it would have affected everyone across the board. But like our minister said, the more you earn, the more you pay. Of course, when the budget speech was announced, there was a lot of backlash, which was expected. Some of the people who had a lot of things to say was the ANC Youth League, who were basically talking about the fact that Pravin didn't really take into account what the president had mentioned in SONA, which I kind of knew was going to happen. I feel like it happens every year. You have to remember that the president almost sets the tone of how the budget is going to be or what the expectation is. I mean, you remember he was talking about radical economic transformation the entire time. So of course the criticism is going to be that when people hear the budget, that nothing about it is radical and there isn't any economic transformation. But again, Pravin can only maneuver so much. But honestly, Pravin's got other issues that he's got going on, and one of those issues is really the beef between him and Tom. So by now we're all fully aware that our finance minister and our commissioner don't really get along. I think we were made aware of this sometime last year when confidential, communication between the two was leaked, and we're all just very aware that the two of them don't get along. So on Friday, regular day for me at the office, next thing we get an email telling us that the commissioner is having, a press conference or, a briefing, if you will. And it was very kind of like sudden, very kind of quick. And I remember when we got the email then, had to rush over to SARS to hear what this is going to be about. Initially for me when I got there, I realized that this isn't really going to be, SARS's response about the budget, because I'm like, then it wouldn't be so sudden. It wouldn't almost be like a surprise, because I mean, they know that the budget is happening, and then if they're going to give commentary, that's what's going to happen. So I was like, you know what, I feel like something else is happening here. So of course we get there, all the media outlets are there, whatever, and we sit and he basically starts reading from his statement. And he basically, to sum up the statement really, in my opinion, it came down to two things. He basically had us all there to talk about two articles. An article that appeared in Business Day and another article that appeared in Mail and Guardian. So the Business Day article was basically this. This article basically goes on to say how Pravin was talking about the 30 billion rand gap, and that he feels that, the gap was caused by, SARS administration and maybe incompetence, kind of leaning into something like that. So Tom spent a bulk of his presser basically talking about this whole thing, saying that, SARS has got competent people and, all the other things. So basically him explaining it from SARS's point of view, which it's expected. We all knew he was going to do that. The second thing that he then talked about was an article that the Mail and Guardian ran that basically said Gordhan versus Moyane. It was basically going into details about the relationship, and how it's so strained and all of this and all of that. So when we're in the presser, Tom basically goes into that as well. And from his perspective, more than the fact that the two of them had issues, he really wanted to deal with the fact that there's so many leaks. He didn't understand how is it that the Mail and Guardian, and I suppose everyone else, is getting all this confidential information about communication that happens, whether it's in meetings or letters that are sent to the minister and all of these things, and how they get that. He basically then reads from his statement to say that, an investigation was conducted by SSA, and they found basically that the leaks were not coming from SARS, and that it is their opinion, and I suppose Tom's opinion, that these leaks are coming from Treasury, and he was like, we're not the ones who are putting out this information out there because this information is classified, whatever. But the issue is that the information is out there, the issue is that now, us as the public, we're aware of this information, and we know that they don't like each other, they don't get along, whatever. The challenge here is that it makes everyone nervous if the finance minister with Treasury and SARS are not getting along. It makes everyone slightly nervous because it's like, you guys are holding the purse of the country, you guys are getting the money, you're dictating how we're spending the money. At the very least, you guys need to be getting along. So in this presser, Tom basically details all of the reasons why they're not getting along. And part of the issues that Tom says that, they're having with Pravin and all of that is that he says that Pravin inserts himself into SARS business, including people's bonuses and people's leave days. And he also mentioned the fact that he actually hasn't even gotten a bonus because he's still waiting for approval from the minister in terms of like the bonus that he can take and all of those different things. He also mentioned the fact that, when he's in meetings, that Pravin yells at him and he shouts at him and he screams at him. He made mention of the fact that, Pravin won't shake his hand. He also made mention of the fact that, Pravin treats him like a boy, which is something that he's mentioned more than once, if you have been following the drama that the two of them have, and I feel like ultimately the gist that I got, because even when he was speaking, you could hear and you could see on his face that he was visibly, angry and upset about this. And I think ultimately what Tom is really looking for in terms of the two of them, the relationship that they have, is that he's looking for respect. And honestly, for me, the entire time that I was sitting in the presser, I just couldn't believe it, because I realized when we were there that the purpose of this presser, in my opinion, was to air out the personal beef and the drama that the two of them have going on. He even went as far as to say that it's a personality cult of the person of the commissioner and the person of the minister of finance. The entire time I was like, wow guys, 2.5 hours, maybe 2 hours, we're sitting there just to hear him air out, this beef that already we knew about. We knew that they were not getting along, and I feel like all this did really is that it gave the story more life, it gave it more traction, and people are going to keep talking about it and they're going to keep nitpicking it. I was just I really was exhausted, by the end of it all, because I'm I don't understand why we're here for this. I don't understand why we're beefing about this. It's one thing if you guys don't like each other for personal things, but I don't think it should interfere with the work that you're doing, because we're here now and we're talking about the fact that this one will shake your hand, this one yells at you, this one does that. Because I was talking to Emily about it and we were like, you know what? I feel like a lot of these things, Tom should have dealt with them right there and then. I mean, if you're in a meeting with someone, right? And for whatever reason, they start yelling at you, they start being disrespectful. I feel like in that moment, you're like, okay, first of all, what you're not going to do. I just feel like you deal with it right there and there, Instead, he writes all of these letters and all of these confidential things that ultimately becomes everybody's business. And now we know that you guys don't like each other. Point is, these two need to figure it out. They need to get along. Just too much going on, especially when it comes to, the Ministry of Finance, And I'm still holding on to my theory, by the way, about our Deputy Finance Minister. I'm still holding on to that. Considering that the Hawks have now brought up investigation, or they want to bring charges against our current Deputy Finance Minister. So my theory in the last video, it's still going to stand. Till I see something to the contrary, I'm still going to believe it. But we'll see what happens with these two. So besides this press conference, that Tom had, Friday was really just a very trying day. For me emotionally, it took a big toll on me because of what was going on outside of all of this, personal beef. And I'm sure you guys are aware that this is what happened on Friday. And wow, wow is really all I have. It was an entire march, that I don't even understand. So, okay, we're going to start here. We're going to start with the fact that, it was covered up under the guise of, it's really a march against crime. That's what people were calling it. I mean, that's what our president even called it. He basically said that government needs to not ignore the fact that people are believing or people are feeling that crimes are being committed by foreign nationals. This is what he said. We cannot close our eyes to the concerns of the community that most of the crimes, such as drug dealing, prostitution, and human trafficking, are allegedly perpetrated by foreign nationals. So that's what he said on Friday. What I'm struggling with is the fact that we've talked about this. We talked about this more than once. I mean, we even talked about this when Herman was out here talking reckless. We talked about this, And now, here comes the DA talking about, some people are silent when these things are happening. And I'm like, I just feel like, again, why I struggle with the Blue Party. It's like, you guys don't have the room. Because when Herman was out here being reckless since last year, none of them collected him. None of them called him to order. But today, we want to talk about, that person's being silent. It's like, your role needs to be more than, calling out people like, that one's not doing their job, that one's not doing their job. Because now, it's you, right? This is what you always wanted, to be in charge and to rule and to run things. Now it's you. Now we're looking at you to say, well, you didn't say anything either. You didn't call this person to, order either. And now this is where we're at. And I know people are going to say that it's a bit of a reach, to say that what's happening, somehow they're going to tie it into Herman. But we have to remember that this was the same man talking about how foreigners are dirtying the city. And then, a little while later, we have these xenophobic attacks and these outbreaks. And now we want to act like there isn't a link. Let's be serious here, And of course he can get on Twitter and talk about no, I condemn this, I condemn that, violence or whatever. But we have to remember, and I've said this before, that, we have to be careful with our words. Our words are powerful and our words can create. And sometimes our words invoke things in people. And sometimes it invokes violence. Sometimes it invokes a hatred that people have always had. And now when they hear a voice, they feel like they have a justification. Because they're like, oh, finally, look, there's someone over there who's high up and important and kind of believes the same thing that we do. But all right, so let's talk about it. Let's go there. So people want to talk about crime and all of these other things. So here's my question. What happens when the foreigners do leave, right? So what happens when foreign nationals do leave, but the crime and the inequality and whatever else is still there? Then what? Because the truth of the matter is that scapegoating foreigners is easy. It's easy, right? It's easy to say the problem is caused by those people and the problem is over there. What happens when they leave and those issues are still here? Do you see how none of that actually makes any sense? And I've talked about this before, is that I think people don't realize the fact that when they're talking about foreign nationals, there's an element of anti-blackness to it. Because when people are talking about foreign nationals, it's always related to people on the rest of the African continent. We don't talk about foreign nationals from other countries, outside of the continent, because they get to be called expatriates. But foreign nationals who come from the rest of the African continent, they somehow are the problem, the ones who bring crime and drugs and all of those things, which is like, I'm gonna go with no, or I'm gonna go with it's incomplete. And especially when there's an issue and your target and your reasoning for it is this specific group of people, I'm gonna say you're incomplete and you're wrong. So let's deal with a couple of myths real quickly. I mean, we've done this before, but I'm gonna do it again. When people talk about foreign nationals, taking their jobs, and they're talking about how, companies, hire foreigners, because it helps them with their BEE scorecard, and that's why they're losing their jobs. Here's the thing. The definition of black, according to BEE, basically says this: And it states that it's talking about people who are South African born. So that means that if a company or people decide to hire foreign nationals, it does nothing to the BEE scorecard. So this isn't a, yeah, you're hiring them to improve your scorecard. No, it doesn't. So let's talk about child grants. You go on the government website and it's very clear to say that you have to be a South African citizen or permanent resident. Like, this isn't that, you know, oh, people are having kids and now our government is burdened to have to take care of foreign kids. It's like, again, I feel like people aren't hearing themselves. It's like there's all of these different myths and, you know, the information and the knowledge is out there, you know, and I say this to you guys all the time. Do your Googles, you know. Auntie Google has all of the information that you need. Even when you're in the search button and you don't even know what to ask, you can just put in a word and she will come back in 0.00001 second and be like, is this what you meant? Is this what you were looking for? Like, the information is out there, you know. But again, who needs information when people are trying to be hateful? Like, the actual factuals don't matter when you're just trying to be hateful, and who cares about the truth, even though it's widely available. I read somewhere on Twitter where someone said that, you know, this is a time for South Africa to decide what kind of country it wants to be. And I'm sitting here thinking that, didn't this country already decide in 2008? Because you guys have to remember that this isn't the first time we've been here before. You know what I mean? We've been here before. So haven't we already decided that this is the type of nation that we want to be? And it makes me sad to think that way and to even say it. But I have to wonder, because here we are back again. Because for me, the reality is, you know, it's a lot of different things. And I think part of it is people's mindset and people's perceptions, you know. And I get that mindset and perceptions aren't things that are going to change overnight. Because the reality is, people are agitated, you know, by a lot of different things. Crime, inequality, unemployment. People are agitated. And unfortunately, they are taking that agitation and that frustration and they're blaming an external source. Or they're finding someone else to blame just for it to make sense. So then the issue really should be that we should be trying to fix these issues, right? Because that's what people are complaining about, and they're incorrectly attributing it to a group of people. Because people are out here loud and wrong constantly, and they say these things like they're fact. They say these things like, yeah, those people over there, or that house over there, or whatever. And it breaks my heart, because you realize that, and again, I've said this, you know, that when people leave their homes, for whatever reason, it's not because they're leaving their homes because, oh, you know, I just want to go for nice times over there. People leave their homes for, you know, serious issues and for legitimate reasons, you know. And for us to receive people in this way just breaks my heart. I mean, I talked about this when America was doing the whole deportation and, you know, trying to keep people out from certain countries. It's like, it's the exact same thing, you know. And we can't, as a nation, just look at it when America does it and be like, that is so wrong, oh my goodness, when we're doing the exact same thing. We need to do better, you know, and it can't just be a thing that we talk about constantly without doing better. Do you get what I mean? We're all gonna need, for not only just our government, but for us as people in everyday lives, to watch the things that we say, you know, to correct ourselves when we think and say certain things about people, you know what I mean? We have to do work in each and every single one of us if we want to see things change. And of course, we're looking to the government as well, because it's not enough, you know, for them to be like, yeah, no, of course it's not true, whatever. You've already put it out there. You know, you've had people in government, in powerful positions, put it out there already. It's time for legitimate, real action. That's really what we need. I'm just tired. Like, I'm sick of it, to be quite honest. Like, whew. Anyway, so let's talk about America real quick, per usual. Donald Trump had a briefing, a press briefing or whatever, and there were certain media houses that were banned from the briefing, and there's like a whole list of them, and then 2 of them decided that they're going to boycott it on their own. It's really interesting. I mean, of course, this doesn't help the relationship that he has with the media, but like we said the last time, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to him and his supporters and what he's really about, because at the end of the day, the media is the bad guys. These are the bad guys. These are the ones who are getting it wrong. They're giving you fake news and fake information. But I'm like, really? America, this is where you're at? Like, this is how, man, Like, it's just trying times. Last thing I'm going to talk about really quickly is Caitlyn Jenner.
Finally, I have a message for President Trump from, well, one Republican to another. This is a disaster, and you can still fix it. You made a promise to protect the LGBTQ community. Call me.
Ma'am, like, I'm gonna need for Caitlyn to stop, because this is the thing, you know. It's like, when it was racism, when it was deportation, when it was all of these other things, you know, she had nothing to say. But now that it's something that affects her, that has to do with her, suddenly she has a lot to say. And, you know, President Trump, call me, and all of these other things. And someone said on Twitter that, you know, Caitlyn Jenner is the perfect example of a white woman, that she didn't care about any of these other issues till it became something that affected her. What I want people to remember is that you can be part of a marginalized group, you know, and still be hateful. You can be part of a marginalized group and still not care as long as it doesn't affect you. Do you get what I mean? Like, I feel like inequality and injustice and all of these things should be the same across the board. It shouldn't just be, oh, now this is my issue, and because it's my issue, now I'm going to stand up, and when it's everyone else's issue, doesn't affect me, I'm going to sit back. That's not how it works. But the thing also is that with Caitlyn Jenner, we've always known that she's got dodgy politics, you know. So I'm not really surprised now that all of this is happening. Suddenly she has a lot to say. I'm just like, well, of course it was expected. But yeah, guys, that is it. Thank you again for watching. Please make sure you thumbs up this video and leave your comments. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know your feelings, your opinions, you know, some of the stories that we've spoken about. But yeah, like, a lot of interesting things. It's going to be an interesting week to see what happens. Like, personally, like, on a music side note, I'm still dealing with what Remy Ma did to Nicki Minaj. Like, woo! If you guys haven't heard the track, like, I don't know how, but go ahead and find this track. And 6 minutes and 57 seconds, like, Remy was unrelenting, like, foot on her neck type vibes. But that's a whole other discussion. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.